to LM3 Official's YouTube channel. This is my first video. To give you a little quick background on myself, I am a creative who has been doing professional work for over 30 some years. My work has spanned across traditional art all the way to 3D digital art. I've been personally using Blender for about 2 years now, and by no means am I an expert, but I have made a lot of strides with the software in the 2 years and have had some paid work and done some product modeling work and some animation work. So one thing I wanted to do, because people had told me I should probably try to do a YouTube channel and share some of my knowledge, is I wanted to kind of deal with some of the frustrations new users have with using Blender in terms of like methodologies and thinking around solving modeling problems and animation problems and that sort of thing. And I want this channel to be a place where all of us can grow together and learn together and share great ideas and learn some cool new tips and tricks. So that's the purpose of the video. One of the things that I'm thinking about doing with this channel is basically treating each modeling session like a project. So to give you an example, in this particular video, we're gonna be trying to create a Crescent floor lamp. And one thing that I want to do is I want to break it down into smaller chunks, but I don't want the videos to be too long. So I want to break it down into 3 buckets. One is modeling, so I just want us to focus on modeling and how we solve those problems. Then I want us to have a video subsequent to that that's about texturing and creating shaders. And then if it's something that requires rigging or animation, then do a third one for that. And then kind of knock them out in like rapid succession, like they'd be like within a week of each other, right? So, because really what I want you guys to do is understand why you make decisions around your modeling, your shaders, and your animation. That's the whole purpose of the channel. And I'm just going to test it out and see if that's a good format for us to work in. Since this is my first video, this one might be a little longer than the rest. I'd like to be able to keep most videos around no more than like 15 minutes. So this one will be longer than 15 minutes because I'm still trying to fill things out. If the audio is not the best, then my apologies. I will be working through really refining and cleaning things up. So that's what we're looking forward to. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with the process of creating this floor lamp today. And I will go through you with some of my thinking around how I go about taking something, say, from a photo like this into creating a 3D model. These lamps, I'll tell you where I found this images. I found this online. These lamps are made by a lot of different manufacturers. They have different brand names behind them, but it's essentially the same lamp. And this seemed like a pretty good one. I happened to find a blueprint, so we're going to be loading that in the next part of this video to use it as a guide to kind of help us build this thing out. The version that we're going to build is going to be slightly different from this one, but not too much. So to give you an example, like this little section here, I'm not going to make. I'm just going to bow this straight across, and then this piece right here will just neck down into this top part right here. But we're going to do that next. Alright, so let's begin. Let's start with something called reference images. So reference images are very important when you're working in Blender and getting ready to model something. And basically what a reference image is an image that allows you to see what a product or an object looks like. In the real world, when you get paid work, very rarely will you ever get a blueprint or a schematic, which is kind of better because it can force you to work with the constraints of like more of a 2D view, so you can guarantee that things are straight. Luckily for that lamp, I happen to find like a low quality blueprint, so that's what we're going to build from. So to get started, let me go ahead and delete everything here in the scene. You can either drag and select like I did, or hit A, and that'll select everything up here. And then I hit X, delete. So now we've got a clean slate here. I'm going to hit the N key to hide my N panel. And first thing I want to do is make sure I'm in the front orthographic view, which you can see up here. If you're in Blender and you don't see the statistics, then all you have to do is click the chevron by overlays, and then just make sure statistics is checked. And then once it's checked, you'll be able to see this if you want to follow along. This piece right here. Okay, so I'm gonna hit Shift A. Let's go to Image, and let's do okay, and then navigate to wherever your reference file is. Links will be in the description to this file. It's on my Gumroad for free, and you'll be able to get it from there and follow along. So I pulled in the reference image of this lamp, and if you notice, let me zoom in a little bit. If you notice, you'll see that there's a side view, there's a front view, there is a back view, and then there's a top view here. So just to show you, this one here is the side view, this one here is the front view, rear view, and top view. For models that have really crazy shapes and they're all different on each side, this is kind of very important to kind of keep up with. For the sake of this lamp, it's not that important. It's pretty symmetric all the way around for the most part. So what I want to do is I want to make sure I know where my origin is, and if you're in Blender, by default, typically your 3D cursor, and hopefully you guys know what that is. I'm trying to not to go into too much detail because that make the video just way too long. But if you require a video where I need to go into like deep dive in what everything is in terms of the interface and how to basically use stuff, let me know in the comments, and then I'll work on that video for you pretty soon. So, but I'm going to assume you guys know a lot already. So I'm going to take my cursor, I'm going to restrict it on the x-axis, and I'm going to move it here in the center. But just to make sure we can see everything, I'm going to go over to the properties, and for depth I want it to be default because I want to be able to see basically when we model, I want to be able to see this blueprint constantly with it. I don't want it in the back of the model. I don't want the model to obscure it. For now, just so you guys can kind of see it better in the video, I'm going to leave it as default. There are times when I would want the probably the blueprint in the back more so than in the front, but I've done it both ways, but doesn't matter. And I do want to see it on both sides for now because I'm going to show you how I want to tie all these together. One thing we want to do is we want to change the opacity, and I want to bring it down quite a bit. I don't really need to see it that much, so about 0.233. And before we go any further, I'm going to go up here where my collections are. I'm going to click on that empty, which is that image we brought in. I'm going to hit F2, rename it, and I'm going to call it ref.front because this is going to be the front view of this image that we're going to use to model. I'm going to also make sure that stays selected. I'm going to hit M to create a new collection or move it to a new collection. I'm going to hit new collection. I'm going to call it reference. And then I'm going to hit create, and now this is in a new collection of its own. Okay, now that we've done that, the next thing I want to do is I want to select this image. I want to hit Shift D to make a duplicate. I'm going to right mouse click so it stays in place, and then I'm going to hit 3 on the numpad, and that's going to give me an orthographic right view. I'm going to hit R and Z to rotate it on the Z axis. I'm going to type 90 for 90. Actually, you know what? Let me flip this around. RZ 180, because I want the lamp facing towards the front to match the front view. So this is the second one. I'm going to hit G and Y, and then I'm going to move it to the center of the origin just like we did with the front view. Somewhere around in there. Then I'm going to come back up here where the collections are. I'm going to hit F2. I'm going to call this ref.right. Hit enter and save your file. Okay, so there's only one more view that I really care about. I don't really care about the back view because the back view and the front view is pretty much the same. Here, the only difference is this pole. You can see the pole on the back side of it. That's going to be a given if we model it here like that. And I'm going to model it from this right view and then check it through the front view. So let's look at the front view by hitting 1 on the numpad. Let's see. Give me a second here, guys. I think I got something off here. Yep, something's off. Give me a second, see if I can fix it. That's not off too bad. There we go. It just wasn't centered enough. Okay. So there's that view. I'm going to go to 3. There's that view. We're still on the origin. Yep, so we're good. Okay. So now we need one more view. So what I want to do is I want it to kind of more match that front view. I'm going to hold down the ref.front, hit Shift D. I'm going to let it go. I'm going to rotate it on the X-axis by -90. Hit enter, and then I'm going to hit 7 on the numpad to go to the top view. So this one here, we're going to rename it to ref.top. All these should be in the reference collection. And the only thing left to do is kind of get it size on the origin like we did with the other two. So I need to move the ref.top. I need to hold down G and X to constrict it on the X-axis, and then what I want to do is move it here like so. Now one of the things I want to show you is right here. If you look at this image, this piece up here up top is the base of the lamp. This piece down here that's smaller, that's the shade of the lamp. So one thing I want to do with all my different views, and you're going to see I'm going to skew them like so, I want my bases to be fairly lined up. They don't need to be perfect because, like I said, the blueprint itself is not perfect. But I kind of want to try to get it close. So first thing I notice is that my top view is just too high, so I'm going to hit G and Z, bring it down here near the bottom. And I'm going to use the pole here in the blueprint to try to better line it up with the piece here. And then I'm going to go G and Y, and I'm going to bring the base, kind of get it as close as possible to here. Alright? So that's pretty decent. And I know this looks like a big mess as you guys are looking at it. What I'm really focusing on is this section right in here in the middle. So there's my front view, there's my right view, and then there's my top view. I can take this one here and just slide it. Actually, let me take the front one and slide it forward. Like that. More like that. You guys see how they're kind of superimposing on each other now? Alright, so let's save our file. I'm going to go back to number 3, the right view, because that's where I want to start modeling from. When we go back up here where the collections are, I want to hit this filter icon, and then I want to turn this arrow here on. This lets you know if you can select something or not, and then I want to take the entire reference collection and check that little arrow where it like turns off. That disables your ability to accidentally click and move these around and throw this off. Then I'm going to close this out. I'm going to go back to scene collection, so when we start making our first shape, it won't try to shoot it in that reference collection. Okay, save your file, and then we're going to get to modeling. Alright, so next step we're going to do is let's start modeling the base. So here's how I want to do it. I want to start with the base. We're going to model it first. Then we're going to move our way up to this part of the pole. Then we're going to tackle this bent part of the pole. Then we're going to deal with this little connection piece here between the pole and the shade. I don't know what you call that piece, but we're going to build something that looks right. And then we're going to build the shade last. For this particular video, I'm not going to worry about the light bulb on the inside because in this view you're not seeing up into the lamp. So that's just more geometry that we'll have to render. We're not going to render in this video either. It'll be in the next one when we do the texture. We'll do texture, shading, and lighting. And then we can render from there. But for this one, I just want you guys to focus on modeling, and I want to focus on some of the key aspects of doing that. So let's go ahead and do the following. I'm going to move my mouse cursor right about in the center part of where this base is. And I want to move the 3D cursor down here. So when I bring in my first shape, I'll know where it's going to pop up. So somewhere relatively here in the center, I'm going to hold down the shift and right click once. If you notice, that moved my 3D cursor here to the center. So whenever I go into Blender and I tell Blender to pop a shape in here, it's going to stick it center right there on that spot. So in Blender, I want to hit Shift A, and I want to go up to Mesh, and then these are called Mesh Primitives. These are basically basic shapes, starting block shapes that most people use to model things in Blender. And this keeps you from reinventing the wheel. This keeps you from having to create an icosphere from scratch, or a circle from scratch, or a cube, and so on and so forth. So this is a big help to start off with. So if you look at the shape of that base, it's really a squished down cylinder. And I like to look at shapes more like that. Like look at it from like basic building blocks, like basic you know, most basic shape. Like, what can I build from that? So for that base, it would be a cylinder. So I'm going to select cylinder. And if you notice, I've got a little menu that pops up over here that's kind of cool. This is going to get us closer to what we want sooner than later. So for vertices, I only want 16. It doesn't need to be a lot of polygons. So I selected 16, and you saw something change. Zoom out a little bit. Radius, I don't need it to be that big. So I'm going to hold down the shift key while I scroll with my left wheel. And I want to get it to where it's almost the width of this base. Doesn't need to be perfect because we can change it later. And then I'm going to do the same with depth. Depth is like how tall it is. And so it's changing the z-axis. So I'm just kind of scrolling that down till we get it roughly about the size of that base there. And then I'm going to let it go. Cap fill types, n-gons. Yes, that's what I want for now. N-gons are not a problem as long as they are a flat surface. N-gons become a problem once they are on a curved surface. But there is no curved surface here except for edges, and I'm gonna talk you through how to deal with that. So let's go back to this right view again. And what I want to do, because I can't see through this, is I'm gonna hit Alt and Z, or you can hit this button up here. This turns on the X-ray mode, which allows you to see through the geometry. One thing I'll note that you'll notice on my setup, because my setup is tailored for me, because when I use Blender, this makes me work more efficiently. You'll see I have a menu, so when I hit Tab, by default, vanilla Blender, you hit Tab, and then you'll have to on your keyboard hit 1, 2, or 3 on the top keys, and that denotes vertices, edit, edge edit, or face edit. But you'll notice with mine, when I hit Tab, I have a menu that pops up that allows me to just swipe my mouse to one of these edges. This is called Machine Tools. I think there's it's a free plugin for the menus. I do have some paid, like Mesh Machine and Box Cutter, and those guys. They just make me work faster. They do fix some geometry things when you're kind of in a rush. We don't need to worry about that right now. But if you see yours doesn't look like this is why. So in your case, if you have vanilla Blender, just hit Tab and 1, which is vertex mode. And this allows me to not only select all the vertex on this side that I'm looking at, but on the opposite side of the geometry too. I just want to see it, right? The X-ray mode. So I turn X-ray mode on, and I'm going to do G and Y and move it along that axis. And then I'm going to hit S because I want it to scale in a unified manner, just roughly the size of this. I'm going to bring it down just a hair on the Z-axis. So I hit G and Z. Because when you hit G for move and then you hit X, Y, or Z, you're constricting the movement on the X or the Y or the Z. I'm not going to get into like if you hold down G and then shift Z, and it'll constrict it on every axis but the Z, or if you hit shift Y other than the Y, that kind of thing. We don't need to worry about that for this exercise. We'll deal with this we'll deal with going into discussion about that on another one. So we got the base primitive for the base there. So one thing I want to do is, if we come back up to here where our references and our objects are, I'm going to hit the little eyeball icon that just hides it in the display, and I just want to take a quick look at it real quick. So this is the primitive shape for that base. Okay, one thing I want to go ahead and do is I want to go to face select mode. I want to select the top, hit shift and the bottom, and I want to do an inset by hitting I just to bring it in, because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a grid fill. One thing I want to start out with, I'm going to hit X. I want to delete both of these faces. I'm going to fill the faces one at a time. And the only reason why I'm doing that is just to show you guys. So I want to go down here to edge select mode. I want to select this whole edge here. And you can either go to face and grid fill, or with me I'll hit Control F or Command F and then hit grid fill this way. It's just quicker. It's what I'm used to. And then I'll fill the bottom because I want to get all quads, and that's kind of important. Different people have different takes on it, but it's just a good habit to get into, because if you're working with a larger team, people who specifically do animation, rigging for like face modeling, organic modeling, like moving fingers, that kind of thing, having them working in quads is better, because visually from the human's eye perspective, this makes a whole lot more sense in terms of where to move things and how things are laid out, versus if this was like super dense geometry, the brain just can't process it. So quads are very good, and quads are very clean geometry. So let's go ahead and fill this one as well, just like we did before. And I'm just changing the offset just to kind of keep it consistent and keep it clean, right? And let's turn on, before we do anything else, let's turn the reference back on, and I'm going to show you something. If you look back here in the blueprints, there's a pole that comes out like kind of offset near the back of this thing. And when you buy one of these and it gets shipped to you, typically what happens is you'll get a product in the mail and the base will be separate, then the pole will come in like 2 or 3 pieces, and it screws down into here. So that means we need to have a hole here, right, in this base before we start modeling the pole. So that's the next thing I want to do. Okay, now that we've got this taken care of, I want to go ahead and let's leave the schematics up just for a second, or reference images up just for a second. I'm going to go in face select mode. I'm going to select these two. I want to do an inset, right, just to keep the geometry clean on the outside. I'm going to go to top view. I'm going to go back to vertex view. I'm going to take this vertices here. I'm going to hit GG to kind of scale it along that axis there. Not by much. I don't want to get crazy with it. Alright. And I want to select all 4 of these. I want to hit S and X to bring them in closer. You guys will see what I'm doing here in a second. Just kind of playing with it here. Then I'm going to select these two. I'm going to do G and Y, and I'm going to bring them up closer. And since this is flat, I'm not worrying about it lifting it up off the surface. So if I go and go back to 3, see those vertices there are still flat. And that's why working in orthographic mode is key a lot of times to getting things like this right with your modeling. Okay, so now I want to go ahead and cover something that's kind of important. There's a plugin that you can get for Blender called Loop Tools. And if you don't have it, you go to Edit and Preferences. You go under Add-ons, and you can either do a search for it. And with the new Blender, you would have to either go into the settings and pull it up from there. Right? So it's pretty easy, but you need to have Loop Tools installed. If you don't know how to install it, just do a quick YouTube video. I don't want to waste too much time on our video here going over that simple stuff. So, but you'll see I use it a lot. You'll see a lot of people on YouTube use it a lot. I want to go ahead and select these 2 vertices. I want to hit S and X because I want to span them out and keep them almost equal with the other one. So then I'll have if we look at the edges, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I have basically a hexagon. And I want to select these 2 faces here. I'm going to do another inset. Just bring it in just a little bit. Right? Just to keep our quad topology nice and clean. And then I'm going to right click one time, go to Loop Tools, and Circle. And then I'm going to scale this down. That just made it a little bit nicer than the version that we had. And I don't want this hole to be too small because I need to keep in mind the size of the pole that we're going to do. Need to move this down just a little bit here. So we've got a hole here. And then I'm going to skew this like so. Zoom in a little bit. Because now I want to extrude this hole down. I don't want to go too far. So let me turn Alt-Z back on, which is the X-ray mode up here. And I'm going to hit E and Z because I want to restrict it on the Z-axis. And this is going to be our hole. I don't need to go too deep because you can't see it. You won't be able to see it in the geometry. So I go down about that far. Just kind of eyeball it. You can see how thick the base is. The base is from, say, here to here. And then you see I didn't go down that far because I really don't need to. Okay. I'm going to turn X-ray mode off by Alt-Z. And let's do a little bit quick cleanup before we get too far here. So what I want to do is I want to disable the viewport of the reference photo so I can see a little bit cleaner here. I'm going to go in here to Edge Select Mode, or Alt, and then the number 2 on the keyboard. Not the numpad, but the number 2 at the top. And I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to click that one little line there, that one little edge. So all I want is just the edges here on the outside of this hex shape. Then I'm going to go and I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and then I'm going to click up here at the top and select that one as well. Now I'm going to hold down Control B. I'm going to hold down the Shift because I don't want a really strong bevel. And if you notice, that's one. I'm going to hit my scroll wheel on my mouse. Uh-oh, I went too far. Hit my scroll wheel on my mouse because I want a 2-segment bevel, and I just want it nice and tight. I don't want it too tight because I don't want it to look super sharp because that looks unrealistic. Then I'm going to let it go. And if you notice, we've got our menu here that pops up, and we got a 2-segment bevel. The shape is 0.5, which gets a nice edge to a bevel, a nice curvy edge. If you set this, you'll see a lot of people setting this to 1 in videos to kind of like control the shapes. Once you create a subdivision surface modifier, which we're going to do here as well, just not yet. And you'll see that keeps it nice and straight, but that's really to control the shape. In our case, we want a nice little edge on it, and it's still going to control the shape. But this miter outer is set to sharp. I want to set that to arc. It just helps with the geometry, and I don't know why this is not turned on by default. Blender, if you guys happen to just randomly stumble across this video at any given time, I would love it if you would consider making arc as an outer miter shape the default. And if there's some reason why you're not doing it, I would love for you guys to make a video or explain it somewhere, like why it's not the default, but because I think it should be, and a lot of other people agree with me. So I'm going to come back to object mode up here, and now when we run a subsurface, I keep saying subsurface, a subdivision modifier on this, which really smooths this out. Blender's doing math, calculating extra geometry in here. This is not going to look like this. It's going to look like a circle. Let's do this. So before I get too far ahead of myself on this base, let's select the edge here at the top and at the bottom, and I want to do the same thing. And see, because we put this inset here, this gives us a little bit of breathing room to create some really nice geometry here without overlapping the geometry, which causes like crazy looking stuff to happen. So I'm going to hit Control B or Command B if you're on a Mac. I happen to be on a Mac using an external keyboard that is for Mac and Windows. So, like I said, you guys should know at least this much about Blender. I shouldn't have to explain this. So, boom. Same thing, 2 segments. I actually want to come in here and I want to create an edge loop here to clean this up. And I'm going to bevel that one. I'm going to go back to 1 segment, and I'm just going to make a nice support loop here. So when we put that modifier on there, that's going to be nice and clean, right? Alright. So before we do anything else, we're done with the base. I am going to run the subsurface modifier on it by hitting Control and 2. And then I'm going to right click and hit Shade Smooth. And now we can see we've got an all quad solution. So let's go up to the top view, and I want to see that hole that we made. Look at that, guys. So we have a perfect hole. Isn't that nice? And it's all quads. Good geometry. Nice support loops. First time. We're done with our base. The only last thing I want to do, but for now, let me go back a little bit, because I want to turn that off, because I want to focus you on like keeping this like basic building blocks looking, and then we'll do the refinement after we model it. So before we forget, let's go back up here where our collections are, and I want to give this this object here, this mesh, a name. So I'm going to hit F2, and I'm going to call it model.base. And then I'm going to hit the M key. I'm going to create a new collection, and I want all of the pieces of the model to be in a collection called model. You could just as easily go back and name it lamp or whatever. I'm just choosing model just to keep it more generic for us. So there we go, guys. We've got our base made, and we're going to come back in here. We're going to turn that reference back on, and we're going to try to figure out how we want to tackle the pole that comes out of this. Alright, so we're getting ready to build the next phase of this model, and that is making this pole. So let me go back to the right hand view, and let's turn the view of the reference blueprint back on. So as you see right here, we've got our base, and then from the base I want to create a pole that comes out of that hole we just made in that base, that comes up. It's going to come up to right here. It's going to break down into a smaller little bit, and then we're going to stop about right here where it stays straight. So that's the next thing we're getting ready to tackle. So let me save my file, and let's come in here. Let me turn the reference off again, come back down here to the base, and I'm going to show you a way that I usually will handle this. So if we come back down here, let's go to edit mode for the edge selection. I want to select this edge loop here at the bottom of the hole, right? And I want to move my 3D cursor here in the center, because when I create the new cylinder that goes in here, I want it to start right here. That way it doesn't incorporate it on one side of the screen, and I gotta zoom out and move it all the way halfway across the screen and find it and all that. This just makes it a lot easier. So like I said, I'm running machine tools on here, so I'm going to have these menus, but you guys can do the same thing. I'm going to hit Shift and S, and I'm going to choose cursor to select it. And if you notice, now my 3D cursor is here in the center of all of this. Why is it in the center of all of this? Because I had selected that edge loop. Actually, I think I screwed up. Let me go back. Shift S, cursor to select it. There you go. So I could have done it with just this line too, but I want to show you how to do this in the event you don't have a line here and you happen to have an Ingon here or nothing there. Then you always want to get in the habit of selecting these edges. So when I create a new cylinder, it's going to stick it right here. It's going to be huge, but it's going to put it right here where we want it. So let's get out of edit mode, and let's go back to object mode, because what I want to happen is I want a new thing to be created here, a new mesh to be created here. Okay, let's go back to right orthographic view. Let's turn the blueprints back on, and I'm gonna zoom out a little bit because this thing's gonna be big. And as you can see, there's your 3D cursor still there. That's right at the bottom of that hole we made in the base. So I'm gonna hit Shift A. I'm going to go down to cylinder again. However, I don't want 16. I want, and I'm going to show you. Let me go back to the top view. I'm going to show you exactly why. I want 8. Because if you look at the hole we made, it only has 8 sides to it. Or you know what? I may have told you wrong. I think it's got 6 sides. Let's check. Yeah, I told you guys wrong. So let's knock this down to 6. There we go. And that way we want all of the sides to match up. We want all the vertices to match up, because if we ever get in a situation where we have to basically tie these things together, it just makes it a lot easier to do so. Let's see, 2, 1. I'm going to go in here and manually. There we go, 0.022. I think that'll work. And the depth we need to adjust. But let's see. While we're in here, we might as well, right? Let's turn on X-ray mode again. Alt-Z. And if you notice, the beginning of our pole goes below our hole. So I want to go right here where it's got location. I'm holding down the shift. And about right there, I think, is where it needs to be. And then I'm going to click outside and turn X-ray mode off. And if you look in here, I've got a new item. It's called cylinder. Let's go ahead and rename it while I'm over here, and let's call it model pole, because I'm gonna make this pole in one piece, and then I'm gonna hit M, and I'm gonna move it into the model collection. So now you see it's under model here, and I want to save my file. Okay, let's go back to right orthographic view. And now that that's selected, let's go to face mode. I want to make sure I'm only selecting the top part of this. And I don't need to inset. Okay. So here's the fun part. We're getting ready to go up. So I'm going to hold down E, and if you notice, on my screen you see a blue line. It's vertical, goes straight up. It means it's already selecting the Z-axis is the constraint axis. If you don't see that, when you hit E, then hit the Z key on the keyboard, and it'll constrict it on the Z-axis. Otherwise, you know, you're moving up on your mouse, you could be all over the place. So I'm going to go to about right here, and it doesn't need to be precise. It just needs to be fairly accurate. Alright, I'm going to inset just a little bit. And this is how we're going to get it to be smaller when we can continue to go up. Then I go back to 3 on the numpad for orthographic view, and then I'm going to hit E again. And like I said, my version is constraining it on the Z-axis. If yours isn't, then after you hit E, then hit Z. And now we're up here to the second stage of this that I was talking about. So before I move on to making the neck, let's go ahead and do a couple of things here with this one. Let's hide reference, and let's go to edge select mode. And I want to come down here where we transition from this bigger part here to the smaller part. And I want to select this edge loop right here. I want to hit Control B. 2 segments. Doesn't need to be super tight. And then I want to click this outer one, and I want this one to be a little bit I want it to be a little bit tighter, actually. A little bit tighter. That's why I didn't select them at the same time. And I'm going to show you a little trick. If you hit the / key on the keyboard, numpad, it will isolate just this particular selected mesh. And I want to come down here, select that edge loop. I want to do a bevel on it. Make it nice and tight, so it doesn't need to be a strong bevel. Right? While we're at it, let's go ahead and delete this face. Select this edge loop again. And let's do a grid fill. I mean, I could have been just like, the grid fill doesn't really matter, but I just want you guys to get in the habit of doing it. Doing grid fills. And I'm going to put an edge loop here. Move it close to here so that when we put the subdivision surface modifier on this thing, it won't do weird stuff. It won't be rounded at the bottom and look crazy. While I'm at it, let's see. Yeah, I don't need one there. So okay, so hit / again, and now everything comes back. Go back to object mode, and I think we are good. We're good with that for now. So we're making progress. If you've made it this far, feel free to take a break if you want to, and then come back, and then we're going to move on to the next part, which will be making the neck. And I'm going to show you a pretty easy way of doing that. Alright, let's go ahead and start trying to figure out how we want to do this. So first of all, like I said, the way I want to tackle this is I want this to be one piece. There's no need to make the neck separate. Unless, well, there's really no reason to do that. Even if you were going to animate it, so like if it was one of those flex ones. In this particular model, this type of lamp, this is all like a fixed curved piece. You can't, in other words, you can't bend it and move it around like you can with the flex neck lamps. This isn't one of those, so this is easier. But let's just keep this with one piece. So one thing I want to do is I want to go back to my pole here. And I'm skewing my view a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. That's the only reason why I'm doing that. I'm going to go to edge select mode. I'm going to select this edge at the top. Right? And I'm going to hit Shift S. Cursor to select it. Because like I said before, what I want to do is I want to make sure my cursor is in the position where I want my next mesh to appear. So I'm going to come out of edit mode for the pole. And go back to object mode real quick. Just take a look at it. Which I know may seem kind of silly to do that, but I'm just funny like that, so forgive me. Let's go back into edit mode, but let's do face edit mode. So in other words, you see the whole face is selected. I'm going to go back to right orthographic view. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit, and let's use there's this little tool over here called the spin tool. It and I have had a hate-love relationship in the past 2 years because for the longest time I didn't even know how to use this thing at all. I'm still not like a master at it, but I'd say I say I understand pretty much how it works. So pretty much the way this thing works is it creates extrusions of a mesh. So in other words, you can extrude stuff with it, but it will curve it. You can create like it does it like a clock dial. You'll see the UI for it. It's not the most intuitive tool in the world. It took me a while to figure it out, like the nuances of it, but it's based upon you creating a pivot point. So let's move the 3D cursor from where we have it. Okay, now we've got our 3D cursor up here. Let's use this tool. So I want to use it on the X-axis. So what I want to do is I want to drag from here. And if you notice, there's something happening, right? And I'm going to bring it across like that. And then, so I've got 6 steps. And one thing I want to do is I want to manipulate these arrows here. Let's move this all the way across. Bam, like that. And let's see if we can bring it down a little bit. And 6 might be a bit much, so let's see. Let's take it down to like 5, 4. Yeah. So let's take this piece here and move it back. Like so. And then manipulate the arrows to get it as close as possible. Like I said, this is not my favorite tool, but it does work, so I'll keep it around. Okay, somewhere around in there, right? And then you hit the arrow key to lock it in. And let's take a look. Let's back out. Let's go to object mode. Let's take a look at the neck and the base. I'm curious. Let's look at the front view by hitting 1. Look at that. The only difference is if you look at the height of the top of that pole here, it's about right. If you shoot it straight across, it's about right. So the front view, there's our base. There's our pole. That's the apex of the neck of the pole. It's the top of it, which aligns almost perfectly to this and this. And if we skew it, we see it here. Now, one thing we're going to handle next is this little area from here to here. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically do the same thing again. I'm going to use the spin tool, and I'm going to bring it down to here. And handle it that way. We could create edge loops here and manipulate the geometry. I mean, we can do all kinds of stuff. I don't really care to do that. I could even, you know what? I got something even easier. What we could do, we could just extrude it and bend it down. Nah, let's not do that. Let's just use spin tool. That way we all get practice using it. Let's save our file, and then we're gonna tackle this piece here. Alright, so first thing I need to do is I need to redefine my pivot point, which let's go into edit mode, edit face mode for this guy here, and then let's do the 3D cursor somewhere around in here. I'm going to go to spin, and I want to create another piece here. Let's try to get it fairly flat where that edge is down there, and let's manipulate it. So I'm gonna get him like on the top right here, and then I'll pull this back. Just gotta play with it until you get it to behave like you want it to. Somewhere around in there, right? About like that. And then I want to just make sure that this is fairly straight. So yeah, so that looks good. And see, this is all part of the same geometry, so it won't look wild. And let's save it. And if you notice, we're still on that pole mesh, model.pole. This is all one piece. And I know it looks sharp and bendy and all of that, but when we put that modifier on there, it's going to clean a lot of that up. Alright, so next thing we're going to handle is the little metal piece that goes over the little shade here, and we'll do that right now. Alright, so it's going to move a lot faster from here. So first thing I want to do is I want to click on the pole, go to face selection mode, cursor to select it like we did before, because when I bring in a new mesh here, I want to start it right here. So going to go to the right orthographic view, and I want to use a circle for this because I want it open at the top. So I'm going to select circle, and because we had, what was it, 6 faces on this, I'm going to do 6. I'm going to scale it down by quite a bit. About right. I want it almost the same size as the diameter on that neck right there, just so that when we see it, it'll look right. Then I'm going to go to vertex selection mode. Oh, you know what? I didn't mean to do that. Give me 1 second. I'll tell you what we did here is I was still in edit mode, and I created this mesh inside of edit mode, and I did not want to do that. So give me 1 second. Let me get out of edit mode for the pole. Now come back in here and create my circle, which is going to create a new object for us, but it should retain the settings that we did on the last one. So make sure circle selected here. Yeah, so we're good. So I'm going to extrude it down on Z. I'm just going to arbitrarily make a shape here that I think looks right. It's going to look almost like a shower head to some extent. I'm just doing a bunch of extrusions here. Let's extrude it about right here, like near the top of where that should go. And I'm going to go up about like right there. Okay, and I'm going to go back to object mode. And because this is going to be hidden, I don't need to run a solidify modifier or anything like that on it. What I want to do, though, is I'm going to hit the / key. And I want to go into edge select mode. I'll hit E and S. Just want to bring it in a little bit, just so it doesn't look so flat. I want to do an edge select up here and do the same thing. It's kind of like a shortcut, but I mean it works. I'm going to hit / again. You can see how it lines up perfectly with our pole. Okay. Let's call this, let's name this model.shade1. I want to move it into the model collection, and then I want to save my file. Okay, and then we're going to come out, and the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the shade, this piece right here, that your light bulb and all that would cover up. Like I said, for the sake of this tutorial, just to keep it shorter, because I already feel like it's getting kind of long-winded, I'm not going to model the light bulb or any of that stuff, because if you just want to model this and render it later in our next video, you're not going to see it anyway. We can literally just stick an icosphere up in there and put a emission shader on it, and you can't tell the difference. No need to over engineering a solution, so we're going to keep it kind of simple. Alright, so next thing we're going to do is this shade, and then the rest of the video is just going to be about us refining it and cleaning it up and tweaking it. Alright, so just make sure your file is saved before we get started so we don't lose our progress here. And I want to select the shade 1 here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to go to edge selection mode, and on this inner edge here, I'm going to select it. And I'm going to do cursor to select it, because now our 3D cursor is right here. I'm going to go to right orthographic view. I'm going to get out of edit mode because I want to create a new mesh So I'm going to hit Shift A. Let's use a UV sphere, and you'll see why. Let's do 8 vertices here. Bam. Okay, and I'm going to show you guys something that I haven't discussed in this video yet, because you have not seen my side panel, some people call it the N panel. They call it the N panel because you hit the N key to turn it on. So I'll turn mine on. One thing that's very important in modeling is that your scale here stays at 0, because it's like a reference point. So when you are adding in bevels through a modifier, or a subdivision surface modifier, or solidify, or anything like that, if that is not 0 and these numbers are wonky or they're off, then Blender, I believe, is calculating the modifier based off these numbers. And if those numbers aren't 1, you can get crazy stuff going on. And a lot of beginners get really confused. I mean, I've been there. We've all been there. So when you change the sizing of things, a lot of times it's best to do it in edit mode. But I'm going to not do it in edit mode for this UV sphere here, just to kind of show you. So I'm going to hit S and watch that scale, watch it change. Now right now X, Y, and Z is the same because I'm scaling it equally on all 3 axes. But if I were to make it wider on one end than another, then that throws all of that off. So let me do X-ray mode so I can see. And I'll show you how to get the scale back to 1 here in a second. I don't really need to worry about it right now. Right now I'm just trying to scale this thing down to where it looks right. That's all I'm concerned about at the moment. And all I'm doing is scaling it, and then I'm moving it up roughly where I think it should be. And we turn X-ray off. So now if you notice, our scale has changed. It's like 0.152 for X, Y, and Z. The way you fix this and reset it back to 1s, you hold down Control and A. You get an apply menu, and I want to apply the scale. See, now it goes back to 1. So if I do any kind of modifier, which I will do one on this, I'll actually do 2 on this one. I'll do solidify and then subdivision surface while we're cleaning it up. You'll notice we don't get any weird stuff. So let me zoom in here, because if you see, this mesh here is eating up into this one, and I don't want that. So I want to scale it down a little bit. I may end up having to scale this out a little bit as well. Yeah, I think I'm going to, because you see right here on these edges, I don't really like the way that looks. Yeah, I'm not really feeling that a whole lot. I'll tell you something else I'm not feeling a whole lot either. Let me rotate this on Z. Get these to line up. Yeah, I don't like that. Tell you what, let's redo this guy here. So I'm gonna delete it. I'm gonna go back to orthographic view. I'm gonna do Alt Shift A, and let's go to UV sphere. Let's go to 6. Let's just keep it all the same. And I'm gonna do the same thing again. I'll scale them down. Do my X-ray action here. You'll see what's going on here in a second. Oh yeah, look at that. So what I did differently here, let me apply scale. Back to 1. So I'm gonna hide this panel. So what I did differently the second time was I made sure that the UV sphere had the same number of vertices or sides as everything else. That way all of the geometry, all the vertices will line up. That way if I ever wanted to make this one piece, like one mesh, been a lot easier to do. It's been a lot, yeah. See how everything just all these lines here just kind of line up? And you'll notice in my Blender, and I should have addressed this from the very beginning, but in my Blender you can actually see the wireframe. That's because when I model, I like to always see that, just because it forces me to have good topology. I never lose sight of it. And by default in Blender, that's not turned on. You can also go, I think you go into overlay and turn that on as well. But like I said, there are videos on that, and I don't really need to cover them on this one. So let's turn X-ray back on so I can see all the way around this bulb. Let's go to vertex select mode, and I need to figure out where we need to cut this thing off at, right? So let's do an edge loop here. Get as close as we can. Bam. So because I'm in X-ray mode, it'll allow me to select all the vertices or faces or edges around the whole model. So I'm just going to hold down the left button and drag across right here because I want to cut it off here. I'm going to hit X, delete vertices. And then I'm going to come back in object mode. Look at that. We got a lamp. So let's zoom out. Save your file. Let's zoom out. Let's look at the front view. Look at that. Almost perfect. Front view, side view, and top view. Look at that. We were just a little off, and where we were off was actually how we positioned our reference off the top one. But if we just shifted it down just a hair, just a little bit, if you notice here, it would have been perfect. But it's modeled right, so that's what matters. Alright, so let's hide reference by hitting the eyeball icon and the camera icon, which means it won't render. And we're done pretty much modeling. Right now, it's just refinement. So before we go on to the refinement piece, let me go ahead up here where the collections are. I'm going to select that shade we just made, and let's give it a name. Let's call it model.shade2, and let's move it into the model collection and save our file. Alright guys, if you've made it this far, give yourself a big pat on the back. Like I said, this video is going to be longer than most because I feel like I needed to explain a few things. If you guys still want that video where I go from like kind of start to finish with the user interface and explaining modifiers and settings and that kind of thing, let me know, and then I'll just make a long and very detailed video for that and go into all that stuff. But like I said, I didn't want to do it with this one. So what we want to do now is we want to start doing refinement work. And what I mean by that is we want to make sure edge loops are there. So when we do the subdivision modifier, everything retains its shape and we don't get like any wonkiness or craziness. So first thing I want to do to this lamp is I want to create a solidify modifier on it. So I'm going to go up here to add, go down to generate, I think it's where it is, solidify. And see, it already chose a value for me, but I don't want it that thick. So I'm going to take the thickness, I'm going to hold down the shift key so I can like do more minor incremental changes and change it to that. Then I want to apply it so it'll actually bake in the geometry there. And then I go down to edge selection mode, and I want to select this inner edge and the outer edge, and then I'm going to do a bevel on these, really small one, right? Because I want it to stay tight, but I don't want these edges here. I don't want these edges here overlapping with each other because then that causes issues. So what's going to happen is when we run the subdivision modifier on here, it's going to know to keep this pretty clean and sharp down here. Okay, and because this is only 6 edges, we're going to probably need to run a higher resolution version on this. So let's start with this, and then we're going to work our way backwards. So hit Control 2. Oh, look at that. Let's do a Control 3 to increase it. And if you notice in Blender, you can actually see it's adding calculated geometry in here. I'm going to right click, go to Shade Smooth. So there's our shade. So that one's done. Shade 2 is done. Let's move our way backwards. Let's go to edge selection mode here. I want to take a look at this guy by himself. I think we already did we do the... No, we hadn't done them. Okay. So I want to select this outer edge. The inner edge is already selected. Let's do a bevel on this. Hold down Shift. Bam. Otherwise, you'll get like craziness with the subdivision modifier there. Let's do it here as well. And I don't want it as harsh here, so I can go a little bit bigger here, right? And I want this to naturally curve down, naturally smooth. I'll let the modifier take care of that, so that's why we're not putting one here, because I just want it to naturally curve. If I put one here, then you're going to see this angle, this harsh angle. So I'm going to hit / bring it back. Let's do Control 3, just like we did with the other. And shade smooth. And we are done with this as well. So for right now, let's look at the shade 2 and shade 1 together. Looks pretty good. Nice and clean. Geometry's lining up real nice. One thing we're going to do next is this pole. And you're going to see that we got a lot of segments here. They should round pretty nice. I want the modifier to round all of this off. But I do want to put some support loops, say like right down here. So I'm going to select the pole. Like I said, this is all one piece. I'm going to go to edge selection. And because I'm selecting past this edge here, and remember we had an edge here, it's only going to give me options in here. So I want this straight. I don't think I need 6. Let's just do 4. I think 4 ought to be sufficient. And let's run subdivision on this of 3. Bam, look at that, guys. Looks pretty good. So I see one issue. It's a minor one, but I'm glad it happened because it'll draw our attention to it. Because we put a subdivision modifier on here, you see how this no longer connects? So if I go up here and turn it off, see now this touches. But when I turn it back on, it like it tightened everything up into like a fist almost. You can think of it like that. That's because I have no supporting edge loop here on the end of this. And I'm going to show you while this modifier is engaged how I can do this. So I'm going to go to edge select, and notice you can see the wireframe or the cage around it. So that'll tell me where to put it. And once I put an edge loop here, like so, that helps, but that didn't fix it. So let me hit the / right? We're going to go up here. I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to show you how to fix this. So the problem is it's still trying to be loose with the geometry right here. So I'm going to go to face selection here, and all I got to do is create an inset. Bam, look at that. And that tightened it up. Now if I really wanted to be OCD about it, I could go here, hit X, and open that up. I could then go to edge select here. Make sure I got the right, nope, I didn't have the right one. This guy right here, and then I can go and grid fill it, just like we did earlier. And see, now this looks a little bit cleaner. So I'm gonna hit / again, bring everybody back. And if you look here, let me just see. This looks a little bit tighter, and I can run another support loop, let's say right here, really tighten it down. And I can go back to shade 1 and kind of do the same thing here. Oh, hold on. Okay. There you go. Now let's click on the pole and let's do shade smooth. See, that looks nice and clean there. And then look at the geometry. How it all flows. You got nice flow there. Okay. So now the last thing to do, as well, let's just double check this before I say that. Yeah. Now, okay, let me show you something. So see how this bevel is a lot tighter versus this one? If you go back in the video, you'll remember me saying I want this inner piece here tighter and this one not to be as tight. you can see by manually doing your bevels here, that'll fix a lot of that stuff. And now the last thing to do is the base, which let's select our base and let's do Control 3. You see how the hole tightened up? Yeah, let's do Shade Smooth. Save our file. And now we have our lamp. You're done. Pat yourself on the back. You've done a great job if you've made it this far. If you haven't made it this far, or if you got stuck on something, go back and watch the video and just take your time with it. This one, like I said, is going to be longer because I felt like I just needed to explain some parts of this more so than others, but this is a fairly easy model to make, and I know you guys will do a great job. If there's anything in here that you really would like to see, leave it in the comments. I'll just ask, just leave constructive feedback and not just troll level feedback, because I just won't even respond to troll level feedback at all. I just won't waste my time with it. But if you guys found this useful, I do ask that you like the video and subscribe to my channel, because that'll give me the motivation to keep doing it. And I'll do it for a little bit. You know, if people like it, if it's helpful for you guys, I'll continue to do it. But if I don't get any traction on it, I'll probably do something else. But I hope this is helpful to you, because what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to help you all, just like, you know, others helped me when I first started learning Blender. But I'm really wanting to focus on explaining things where a lot of people didn't, and I had to figure a lot of it out by myself with no guidance, and found myself frustrated many times trying to figure out how to do the most basic thing, or getting a good explanation as to why something worked a certain way. So those are things I want to bring to you all. So congratulations, great work. Like I said, if you want the reference image and the blueprint and all that stuff, then look in the description and I'll have links to all that stuff there. Thank you all for watching this video. Like I said, please like and subscribe, and I will be doing more stuff very soon. See you guys soon.